Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to University of Illinois Extension's local government education platform. We're happy to have Devon Braunstein from the Illinois Office of Broadband on using this platform for outreach to various organizations, entities, and individuals across the state in hopes to spread awareness and capacity for the BEAD challenge process. Also want to welcome Shubhika Agarwal on. She is from the Illinois Broadband Lab, as well as Betsy Brandon from Lake County. Want to thank you all for your time and expertise. And without further ado, I'll pass it on to you, Devon.
Great. Thanks so much, Nancy. All right, well, we will dive in. For those of you I don't know, I'm Devon Braunstein with the Illinois Office of Broadband. This is our weekly webinar series leading up to the BEAD challenge process. So we are getting really close to launching. I'm excited to share some updates today. So let's dive in. Objectives for today: by the end of this webinar, we hope that you will know what the BEAD challenge is, why it's important, and how to participate, be familiar with current and upcoming resources, learn about how local governments are participating and really taking leadership in the challenge process. You'll learn about broadband availability through new dashboards and hear about common questions and answers. Today's agenda, we'll go through our recap intro slides for any folks who may be new to this space. Then we'll share some updates to the landing page. We'll turn it over to Lake County to share what they're doing to collect challenges from their community members. We'll also feature McLean County. Then Shubhika will walk us through a new broadband availability dashboard resource. And finally, we will go through some FAQs that we have collected over the past couple of weeks of in-person engagement. So to recap, the BEAD program is the Broadband Infrastructure Program. So Illinois was allocated $1.04 billion to connect all unserved and underserved locations to broadband over the next 5 years. We'll need to ensure universal broadband coverage in the state using fiber wherever possible, and prioritizing unserved and underserved locations, then community anchor institutions and Wi-Fi for multi-dwelling units. Each plan will need to have a low-cost broadband service option, as well as a middle-class affordability plan. So where are we in our challenge process timeline? As usual, pre-registration is still live. So if you are an eligible entity, meaning a nonprofit or a unit of local government, including schools and libraries, you are eligible to pre-register. And pre-registration will make sure that you receive the up-to-date information about dates and details, as well as it will allow us to verify that you are indeed eligible to participate. Step 2, this is live. So as of last week, all statuses of locations and community anchor institutions have been published. This is on the landing page, so we will reshare that link in a moment. But you can now go online and see location IDs for unserved, underserved, and served locations that are also reflected on the BEAD challenge map. And you can also download a list of all community anchor institutions and check their broadband availability as well. So this month, we are down to the wire with the challenge process opening. We're really excited to share that we have accomplished a big milestone, which is that our initial proposal, Volume 1, has been approved by NTIA, the National Telecommunications and Information Administration. So Volume 1 is basically the formal document that outlines how we will go about the challenge process. So now that our Volume 1 has been approved, we're kind of completing the final steps on our end to make sure that our user guide, our portal, and all of our documentation reflects this process that we are setting forth. And then this month, the challenge phase will formally open. So stay tuned for that official date that we will share as soon as we feel good about it and ready to share that with you all. The challenge window will be open for 21 days. So you can continue to take speed tests and collect evidence now. But once that challenge phase is open, you will have 21 days to actually submit challenges to the portal. Then the challenge phase will close. The state office will kind of review all of the collected information and verify the data that we receive, the evidence, and then pass along what we receive to open it up for rebuttal, either from internet service providers, community anchor institutions, or other eligible entities who may want to weigh in on the challenges posed. The rebuttal period will last another 21 days. Following the rebuttal, the state will review everything that we've received and then work to publish a final map. So just to recap, what is the challenge process? It is our opportunity to make sure that the state broadband map is as accurate as it can be. And this is important because it informs which locations are eligible for BEAD infrastructure dollars in the coming 5 years. Who can submit challenges? There are 3 groups who can participate more formally. So units of local government, nonprofit organizations, and internet service providers can submit challenges directly, but we also welcome individuals to participate by way of speed testing at beadchallenge.org or partnering with their local government or nonprofit to submit challenges on behalf. And you'll hear more from Lake County today on how exactly they're going about that process. What can be challenged? Any location on the BEAD map that is not accurate based on your experience or your knowledge can be challenged. And when will the challenge process be held? We will be launching in February, exact date to come soon, and this will run for 21 days. So a quick refresh on key terms and definitions. When we talk about a broadband serviceable location or BSL, this is basically a residence or business location reflected on the map as a circle with a Wi-Fi symbol in that circle. Unserved, underserved, and served. This is a really key designation of broadband availability at each address because it will directly influence which locations are prioritized and eligible for those BEAD infrastructure dollars. Unserved locations don't have access to any broadbands, meaning less than 25/3 speeds. Underserved locations have access to 25/3, but not quite that 100/20 megabits per second speed. And then served is any location that does have access to 100/20 megabits per second or higher. I'll also note that latency is another indicator of whether a location is served or underserved. So to be served, a location does need to have latency less than 100 milliseconds. Community anchor institutions, we define through that volume 1 document, which is online and will be outlined in our user guide. But speaking at the highest level, these are institutions that provide critical support and services to residents, particularly those in underrepresented communities. A couple of examples are a hospital, a school, a health center, a library, certain nonprofits, and community centers. Multi-dwelling units are residential buildings with at least 2 units. And latency, again, is the time it takes data to go to a server and back to your connection. So you want low latency. If your latency is higher than 100 milliseconds, your connection may be choppy or freeze up, and that would be an eligible challenge. So you can check your latency by taking a speed test. Reiterating pre-registration. So if you have pre-registered, you likely have heard from myself or Shubhika by now, confirming 2 things. 1, that you have been pre-registered, and then 2, that you have been verified. There were some folks where the ID was either missing or incorrect, so we've reached out to you to make sure that we have the correct information. And so if we couldn't verify you, we won't just ignore you. We will be reaching out to you to make sure we have the right pieces of information. And then once you're verified, the next step is waiting on those credentials for the login portal, which will happen pretty close to when the portal opens up, and you'll receive that by email. So big highlight here, our landing page has been updated with a lot of new resources that allow us to get to that green light for starting the challenge phase. So again, dceo.illinois.gov/BEAD-challenge is the website. You should bookmark star. If you have questions, hopefully it can be answered through visiting this website. So now what we have on the website, I'll highlight some new things in addition to recordings and past slides. We now have our list of all locations and their status available for download in CSV. We also have templates for submitting bulk challenges, as well as an explanation of what each field means. So if you're confused about what goes where, scroll down and there is a slide deck that has every single field explained, along with some of those data points that you might need to pull. We know this process is asking a lot of challengers, so we are trying to make it as easy as we can. And then this is ultimately where that user guide will be and the challenge portal. Another reminder that there will be two main ways to submit challenges. The first is using the BEAD challenge map. So if you have access to the FCC Fabric data or you don't have access, kind of use this as a decision point to decide how it makes sense for you to submit challenges. So if you have never heard of the FCC Fabric data, or you haven't been able to get a license, or you just don't feel like you need it, that is totally fine. We encourage you to visit the BEAD challenge map, where you can search directly for a location, click on it, view the speeds, view the broadband availability, and then decide if you want to make a challenge from there. You can select add to challenge, and then it'll ultimately carry you through to the challenge portal and bring along that required information. If you do have access to the FCC Fabric, this means that you have all of your location IDs already. So you will be prepared to submit bulk challenges, which is where you can forego the map altogether, use it for reference as you'd like, but fill in those CSVs directly with the location IDs and the other required information. Note that the community anchor institutions are something that Illinois added after the fact. So their location IDs won't be in the Fabric. You'll need to visit the landing page to access the list of all CAIs and then pull the CAI IDs from there. We'll kind of recap these if folks are interested at the end, but this is the list of all challenge types. So what can you challenge? You can challenge whether or not broadband is available, the speeds available, the latency, whether a location is a community anchor institution. These are all opportunities for the public to weigh in and submit a challenge. This is our definition of community anchor institution, or CAI. So you can see a list 1 through 8 of the types of entities that we consider CAIs. And if you want to check whether your location is considered one, you can search for it on the map or look at that all CAI spreadsheet available for download at our website. And then I've gone through these materials a bunch, but I have received some questions. So I do want to make sure that folks are aware of these outreach materials around speed testing. So residents can take speed tests anytime now, because we are within 60 days and much, much less of the challenge phase launching. So we encourage you to share these graphics with folks who you might interact with in your day-to-day through social media, print them out, and encourage residents to take 3 speed tests over 3 days and submit. We already have lots of speed tests in, which is very exciting. So we're trying to get that number even higher. And then we have a couple of new one-pagers to try and make this complex information a bit more digestible. So this page is geared towards local governments and nonprofits, how you can sort of engage in the challenge process specifically. And then a more high-level explainer of what that BEAD program is, how the funding will be allocated, why this matters to residents, and how you can get involved. All right, so now I'm really excited to turn it over in a second to Betsy Brandon from the county of Lake County. They have done a really awesome job of kind of taking what they've heard about the challenge process and creating a way for residents to participate directly through Lake County. So I was really impressed with this form, and I think it's a great example of, you know, if you're a county and you're unsure where to start, but you do want your residents to participate, listen up, and I'm sure that Betsy would be happy to kind of share the learnings and template for this process. So this is a quick screenshot, but I will stop sharing and turn it over to Betsy to give us a little explainer and demo.
Hi, everyone. My name is Betsy Brandon, and I'm here at Lake County. I'm assistant to the county administrator, and one of the things that I do is support our the county board special committee on broadband, who has a digital growth initiative, and part of that initiative is to engage in the BEAD challenge process and help our residents engage. And so I will just go ahead and share my screen to give you a good idea of what we have come up with here. So here is our basic form. You can see it's pretty simple. We've tried to make it as digestible as possible for residents. And we worked with our communications team and our IT team. So if you have those type of teams in your organization, they're a great place to start on how to reach residents in the simplest way. But just keep in mind, this is still a work in progress. We're still working on it. So it doesn't have all of the information quite yet, but we'll be ready once it's time. So you can also see we don't have the speed challenge. We're not going to accept those type of challenges. We are going to direct residents to the speed challenge at the beadchallenge.org. It's a great setup and it's already done for us. So we're going to direct our residents there. But we have the different types of challenges that we think will be relevant to our residents here in Lake County. And so they can select the type of challenge they'd like to make. And we kind of have this brief, simplified as best possible explanation of what those type of challenges will be. So for instance, if they select the availability challenge, this form is running a little slow today, so bear with me. You can see it populates with all of the different in categories and that we will need for an availability challenge. We give them a brief kind of simple instructions on how to go to the BEAD map and search for their address and find their location ID, their providers, and the type of technology that is there. If it's a community anchor institute, we also kind of give instructions on how to find that. And then we have them enter their information here, just in case we need to contact them later to clarify any information that they've provided. We do want a way to be able to reach them. And then enter their location ID. For the provider IDs, we actually just decided to go with the providers that are here in Lake County, and they can select their actual name instead of a number identification. We know that for the challenge, we'll need their provider ID, the actual FCC designated number, but that's pretty difficult for residents to gather. So we're going to have on the back end, this auto populates as their provider ID. And same goes for the technology code and the residential or business. We've made these drop downs to try and make it as simple as possible, including the reason code. Keep it as simple as we can. And then they can upload their evidence here. We will have the examples of the types of evidence kind of above here. And then they can submit this, and then it will go to us. And from here on the back end, we will actually be able to export the information needed for a bulk challenge. So if we receive a number of challenges, we will actually be able to quickly be able to export those right into a CSV file and upload those to the state's challenge portal. So we have this for all the different types of challenges. It populates with the correct information that we need for each challenge type. So we're hopeful that this will be able to be a simple enough process for our residents to follow along. It might be new for a lot of people, And so we're going to try and reach out to them and via social media and news and things like that. But hopefully these instructions will be able to help them and be able to engage in this process when needed. And if anyone wants to reach out or anything, please feel free to contact me, email, or Devon. You might be able to give them my information if needed. But I'd be happy to discuss how we came to this decision and forms and anything like that.
Thank you so much, Betsy, and to your team. Let's pause here for questions. I don't know if there are any other county governments or, really a library could do this, a nonprofit. I think the main takeaway is it can feel overwhelming to ask residents to be sending you their challenges. You don't know what, format things might be in, whether they're giving you the right information. So the real benefit of this form is it streamlines it. And it makes sure that you are getting what you need from residents.
Absolutely.
Any questions for Betsy? All right. I will share my screen again. And then we have one more guest speaker here today. So our second feature is McLean County, who hosted a media event to promote the challenge process and encourage residents to participate in speed testing. So they have a speed test banner on their website. They have a couple of YouTube videos out. And I will hand it over now to John Scott, who's a Lead for America Fellow with McLean County, to share a little bit about what they did, their thinking and some of the outcomes from this engagement.
Thank you so much, Devon. I was just about to show all of these things and you got it already loaded up, so that's awesome. Here, let me share my screen, but just to
Sure.
give you, let's see here. There we go. There it is. Great. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Fantastic. Okay. So, like Devon just said, I actually put together a banner here at the top working with our IT department to encourage. It's the first thing that pops up. It's been looping around for a minute. But when you get to the top of the page here, it asks you to take the speed test. It's a giant hyperlink that'll take you there. Let's see here. There you go. So you could just click that link and it just says take the speed test, or you could just scroll down and take the speed test here. I also edited and put together a video for the Accelerate Access McLean County that's on our YouTube channel right now. And it just tells, it gives a PSA basically on what the speed challenge process is. So there I am. We, on the 1st of this month, we held a live stream event. And there I am speaking about the challenge process again. And we were featured, actually, we did a lot of media outreach to the local media out here. So we were featured in our local pantograph here talking about what the event is. And then I actually went into detail on NPR talking about what the process is and the feasibility study itself that we're doing, and more local news. So we had a big outreach that we did. I'll stop sharing it from here. Let's see here. There it is. Stop sharing. So yeah, that was our kickoff event, and hopefully we'll be getting a lot of feedback from there. But yeah, we did a big outreach event from this.
Thank you so much, John. Any tips for other local governments or nonprofits who may want to plan a similar sort of outreach event or press event?
Yeah, I would just I know that many, from at least from our county, a lot of people are very happy to hear that your county or your area is making progress on what they're doing. So I would say reach out to any media that you can so that you can inform the public on it. Our live stream event was pretty easy to put together. If you want to do a live stream or just make a video, I got most of the information from all the slides that you guys put together. It was easy to write the script, you know. So that's why I would encourage just to reach out to the local media, because I think that I know that there is a need for the general public to know this, and they'll be happy to pick up on the story.
Thanks so much, John. And feel free to throw those links into the chat. I particularly am a fan of the one called BEAD challenge process that I called a PSA, because I think it sums up the opportunity for residents to participate, make sure that the map is right, in a really nice way. And I know lots of folks on the team have been sharing that out as a great example. So just awesome work, and great to see what local governments can do. Any questions from other folks on the call for John or McLean County? All right, we'll keep moving ahead. So next, I will hand it over to my colleague Shubhika to share a couple of new resources that we've developed, dashboards related to broadband availability. So Shubhika, I will go ahead and stop sharing my screen so you can share about these dashboards.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Devon. So sharing my screen now. Are you able to look at the dashboards?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so we've been, hearing from a lot of local governments and even nonprofits who've been working with us throughout the process, following on, how do we really make sense of the data that's available on the BEAD challenge map. So I think that has been significantly helpful for a lot of our partners just to get to that address level and get a sense of how exactly is that location categorized on the map. Is it unserved, underserved, or served? Does it have any kind of federal enforceable or state enforceable commitments? And who are the different providers who have reported to provide service at that location? So that's essentially been a very important and essential tool at the location level. But as we have counties and greater regions working with us, they want to make sense of how many of our locations are really eligible or how are they categorized. So with these dashboards here, basically trying to summarize a lot of that data that is on the BEAD challenge map at the county level. With the first dashboard that we're seeing here, this is focused on the broadband serviceable locations. So we have two categories of data here essentially. So on the right, it's any broadband serviceable location, what kind of technology are they receiving? And so there can be locations with multiple combinations of technology. They could either be receiving access through one of these or multiple of these. So do not sum these up. This is not going to be a total of locations in your county, but it's just that out of the total DSLs, which is reflected right here, how many of those have some kind of copper access, how many have cable, how many have fiber. We have licensed fixed wireless and also licensed by rule fixed wireless. So these technology types are the ones that are considered reliable as per the BEAD guidelines. And so these are the ones we are going to be looking at. So we have the numbers and the percentages for each of these. The other category that we'll be seeing here is the total number of BSLs, as I had initially mentioned, and how are they categorized essentially for funding. So we have unserved locations that do not have access to 25/3 speeds, as Devon had shared earlier, underserved that have speeds between 25/3. And then we have the ones in gray represented on the map. So these are locations with enforceable commitments. So these will be categorized as served on the map. And then we have a fourth category essentially, which is served, but not with any kind of enforceable commitment. Those are not reflected on the map just because it's all the other locations that fall in the fourth category. And so we did not include that because that would make it a very heavy data set and difficult for the map to load. So these are different categories. And to look at a specific county, we basically have a selector tool here. So on the top right side, if you want to look at, for example, what's really going on in Brown County. So I just select that. The map zooms into that particular location. And all the numbers actually then share the story for Brown County in this example. So they have a total of 3,000 locations, of which 21% are unserved, 11% underserved, and 15%. And all of these can also be seen on the map where exactly that's falling. So you can also try and think of all other locations that are not showing up as unserved and underserved, but that's not actually the case. So maybe target some of your outreach in those areas. And then we also have all of these other stats for areas that have reported access by different technologies. So this is with respect to the county level dashboard for broadband serviceable locations. If you also want to look at what each of these symbols mean, a lot of times we have kept the colors similar so that it's easy to make sense of what the locations mean. But there's also a tiny legend here, which you can click on and get a sense of what these different colors and symbols mean on the map. You can zoom in and zoom out using the plus and minus feature here, or just scroll using your mouse and get to see where some of those locations that you're interested in or how are they categorized. And you can also type in a specific address if you'd like to do that on the map. So this is how we have one of these. Now we also have organizations working on CAIs and MDUs. So we have another dashboard here, which talks about how are they categorized, which ones of those are eligible and which ones are not. So on the left side here, we have information about the community anchor institutions, and on the right, we have information about multi-dwelling units. So first, looking at the CAI information here, we have the total number of CAIs and the eligible CAIs represented in green on the map. Again, we have a small legend here where you can make sense of what these different symbols really mean. With multiple dwelling units, we have the total number of units. How many of those are currently marked as unserved based on the map? How many are underserved? And how many have some kind of enforceable commitments? We've still also shown the ones that are served but not covered through any kind of enforceable commitments. Those are represented in red here. So again, let's maybe look at a specific county. Now let's go to maybe Gallatin County. So again, a similar functionality where the map zooms in. The numbers now talk about Gallatin County. So they have a total of 19 CAIs, of which 15 are currently categorized as eligible. On this map, just so that it is more helpful, you can actually click on a specific location on the map itself to get more information on, with the CAIs, what's the CAI ID, the type, the address information, what exactly is that particular CAI. So all of that. And then on the MDU side, again, you can click on specific MDUs, which you might want to target for your outreach where it's currently maybe marked as served. That is a red color. And maybe that's not in reality the case. So you can get a sense of the address and then, plan for outreach efforts that way. So again, we have tried to keep the colors as consistent with the BEAD challenge map so that as you're using the two resources together, you can keep track of what really those different colors mean and use it that way. So any of the locations that are currently listed as unserved or underserved or CAIs that are currently marked as eligible, those are eligible for BEAD funding. And all of those that show up as served are currently not eligible. So if that is not the case, those would be areas to target for the BEAD challenge process. That's about the dashboards. If you have any specific questions on things you would like to see, any feedback on how we can make this better for you, so that it's most useful in your outreach efforts and as you're preparing for the BEAD challenge process, let us know.
Any initial questions for Shubhika? Yes, I believe we will be making URLs available so you can peruse on your own. Seeing a comment about rural communities, so I'd love to just clarify that rural communities are probably where the highest number of unserved locations are, and we by law are actually required to connect all of those locations to broadband through the end of the BEAD program. So those will be the first locations to get that broadband infrastructure before we even go after the underserved and the community anchor institutions. So we invite you to check out the map and see if there's any corrections that you might submit to make sure we have it all right, but just wanted to clarify that prioritization. All right, final questions for Shubhika, or we can also cover this at the end. All right. So the last portion of our session for today, we did some in-person outreach around the digital equity plan and the challenge process in January. And so wanted to compile some questions or areas of confusion that we've identified from those meetings to just kind of get ahead of questions that you might be thinking but haven't asked or didn't realize that you had those questions. So Shubhika and I will walk through some of these, and then we will round out our session today with any additional questions that you have. So the first area of confusion, and we're going to try and do a better job of making sure that this is clear, is people have been wondering what is the difference between the BEAD challenge map and this FCC map that they might have heard about in other scenarios. So these two maps are not the same, and here's how they interrelate. The FCC map was created by the Federal Communications Commission, so the FCC, Federal Department, through their data collection efforts around broadband availability nationwide. But this data collection does not include community anchor institutions or certain enforceable commitments. So what the BEAD challenge map does is it builds upon this, and it gives us an opportunity to take what the FCC has made available, but fill in the gaps and make corrections so we have an even more refined and accurate map for our state of Illinois and have the most accurate understanding that we can. So we have added community anchor institutions as well as enforceable commitments, which are contractually committed broadband deployments funded through state and federal grants. So this is kind of our starting point. And then once we open up the challenge phase, the public will have an opportunity to review our starting point, which builds upon the FCC map and make even further refinements or corrections. I'll hand to Shubhika for this next slide.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Devon. So I think this slide here, trying to really get to the differences between Connect Illinois and eligibility for BEAD. Again, we've been working with counties on, several Connect Illinois awards, and we've been sharing in the Accelerate and Broadband Breakthrough Program the statistics of eligible locations. But things have changed a little bit since BEAD, and so we keep getting questions on why the numbers of eligible locations now significantly look different for our counties. So that might be the case in some of the counties for sure. So trying to get to why that is. Differences between eligibility for Connect Illinois and BEAD. So with Connect Illinois, we were only looking at wireline services, but with BEAD, they also consider licensed fixed wireless and licensed by rule fixed wireless access as reliable broadband. So if that is available, those locations would not be eligible for BEAD funding. This information is available in 2 different locations for anything that has to do with Connect Illinois. We have the grant eligibility map available on the Illinois broadband map. That is the right resource to be using if you are preparing for a Connect Illinois award. But if you are more focused on anything that's related to BEAD, then the BEAD challenge map as it is now would be the best resource to look at. Again, after we receive feedback on the challenges we receive, and after we process all of that information, the map might look different. So as Devon mentioned, this is a starting point, and we are trying to get it as fine-tuned and accurate as possible. With both of these programs, the speed tiers still remain the same. So any location that does not have access to 25/3 is going to be considered unserved, and any location that has speeds between 25/3 and 100/20 megabits per second is going to be considered underserved. So in summary, this helps get a sense of why the number of eligible locations might look different for Connect Illinois versus the BEAD program.
Thanks, Shubhika.
On here, again, in the in-person meetings that our team members had down south and in other parts across the state, we've been hearing how the state, or what the state has been doing to actually get a more accurate broadband map. So as you might know already, we have been maintaining our own broadband map since July 2021. We've also participated in the FCC challenge processes for getting the location fabric right and the availability data right as well. The BEAD challenge process that we're doing right now is also one effort towards getting the maps accurate. We will also be carrying out additional field validation in areas where we're seeing those differences between what's reported to the state and what shows up on the FCC maps. So being able to use some of that information to guide the accuracy of the maps, that's the plan. And with the BEADchallenge.org platform, which is collecting speed test data, definitely plan on utilizing that for the BEAD challenge process itself. But the state plans on keeping that open for a longer point in time so that we can continue to use that data to track the progress that we are making across the state in terms of infrastructure deployment, and also identify those areas where we might continue to see those differences between what's being reported in the maps and what the speed test data is telling us. Handing it over back to Devon for this one.
Great. So next question is, how do community anchor institution or CAI challenges differ from residential or business challenges? So the main answer here comes down to the speed thresholds that we are required to use to consider whether or not a location is served by broadband, and thus whether or not it is eligible for funding. So kind of take note of these speed thresholds that I'm about to share. For a community anchor institution, it must be able to access 1 gigabit symmetrical service, which is equivalent to over 1,000 megabits per second, in order to be considered served. So when we talk about access, what we mean is, can a location, so a hospital, school, library, some nonprofits, call up the local internet service provider who covers their area, if that service provider exists, and can they enroll in this gigabit service? If the answer is yes, then they will be considered served. And if the answer is no, then they will be considered unserved. If a CAI sees that it is considered served on the map, but in reality they can't access the service, that could prompt them to follow an availability challenge, pursue an availability challenge, where they would include documentation that the provider could not offer that service to them. So broadband serviceable locations, BSLs, otherwise known as residences or businesses, need to be able to access at least 100/20 megabits per second. So if you cannot access those speeds, again, sort of that same way of calling the local internet service provider, if they cannot provide that, we ask for documentation of what they can provide, if anything, or them sharing that they cannot provide that. And that could be sort of fodder for either a speed challenge or an availability challenge. And then the final piece here is both must have latency at 100 milliseconds ms or below. So if a CAI or a residence or a business, also known as BSL, completes speed tests and they see a latency above 100, that's their kind of shared trigger that they may want to consider submitting a challenge due to that high latency. And I guess another tip here is where speed tests really matter is if a location is on the cusp of moving from one categorization to another. So 100/20 to 25/3, or whether or not that location can access 100/20. You'll want to sort of zero in on whether or not the speed tests change how that location is designated on the map. So I'll keep moving and we'll take questions at the end. Shubhika, feel free to jump in if I'm missing anything on any of these. And I will actually pass to you for this next one.
Yeah. So how can local governments and nonprofits utilize the area and MDU challenges to streamline their challenge preparation efforts? So like, Lake County shared a great example of how they are working towards collecting that challenge information. So as you're working on this, diverting your attention back to area and MDU challenges, and this does not require any additional data collection on your side, but it actually eases how many challenges you might want to collect for a specific area or an MDU, so that the entire census block group or the MDU is then flipped and the burden for proof goes to the ISP to share that they actually provide that service, at those speeds, latency, or that data cap or technology at that particular location. So for an area challenge, if there are 6 or more same category challenges for a particular provider using the same technology, that would trigger an area challenge. So that would be one way of looking at it. On the BEAD challenge map, we do have a layer which shows the census block group. So that can be used as, one of the resources to guide some of your efforts in identifying those locations that you'd like to prioritize. And then with MDUs, it's based on the number of units in that specific MDU. Again, the unit count can be found on the BEAD challenge map. When you click on a specific MDU, it does have that unit count information. So any building that has less than 15 units, even if one of the unit challenges, service reported for us by a specific provider for a particular technology, the provider would then have to provide proof that they actually provide that service to all units in the building. If not, then that flips the category of the building. If it's a building between 16 to 24 units, you will need 2 or more challenges to be filed for the same technology and provider. And if it's a building with 25 or more units, we'll need just 3 or more challenges for that particular building. And you can actually also club the two. So if there are MDUs in a particular census block group, maybe an MDU with 25 or more units, and 3 of them have challenged that service, you can include that with any other 3 locations that would, want to challenge the same provider and technology. So as you are thinking of collecting this information from individuals, this is maybe one way of streamlining your efforts and just getting a sense of, okay, now that I have 6, or now that I have so many based on these requirements here, I can move on to the next area and focus there. So.
Yeah, and I'll just echo that. If you know that there is an apartment building that is not reflected correctly on the map, you don't need every single resident in that building to participate. You just need 1, 2, or 3 residents, depending on the size of the building. Okay, this is a big question, I think, particularly for rural areas. So how do I submit a challenge if I do not have broadband access at my address at all? So it kind of goes back to, how does the map reflect your address? The map may already be accurate, and it is accurate in many, many cases. So we encourage you to visit your public library or a local community center that may have internet, visit that broadband map, and then you can search for your address or your address on the map, and then check its status. So if the map shows your location as green, which means it's unserved and does not have any broadband connection, you actually don't need to do a thing, because that location will already be first in line to get connected to broadband through this program. If you find that the map shows broadband access at that location that is not your experience, then that might give you the impetus to submit a challenge. So you'll want to collect evidence that you can't actually get that service. Again, a letter from your provider saying that they can't provide service to you, or perhaps speed testing, depending on what the specific situation is. And we encourage you to contact your local county, municipal government, or nonprofit to submit the challenge on your behalf. Or there's a speed testing tool, beadchallenge.org, that you can just do fully independently if you do have a Wi-Fi connection at home. So what we're considering doing is kind of sharing out those organizations who have pre-registered to participate, to make sure that residents know who to connect with should they be in this situation. So we'll probably be following up on that opportunity to make sure that those routes are known. All right, so this kind of jumps off of what I was just sharing. How can individuals participate in the challenge process, and what is the role of nonprofits and local governments who want to support individuals in participating? So any individual in the state can participate on their own by taking 3 speed tests over 3 different calendar days and submitting an attestation to the speeds that they currently subscribe to. The way to do this is by visiting beadchallenge.org, and you'll kind of follow the instructions on the screen. And so what's happening in the background is once folks submit that speed test and their information, it'll be considered a type S, so speed challenge, that will be submitted into the challenge process. If an individual is interested in participating in a challenge type that is not speed, then this is where those other local partners will come in. So we can only accept challenges directly from nonprofits, units of local government, and internet service providers. But I think what Betsy is doing in Lake County is a great example of how local governments and nonprofits can sort of encourage the residents to share challenges with them and then collect them in an organized way to then submit as part of the challenge process. Is it okay to complete your challenge on your PC or laptop while connected to your local wireless internet connection or Wi-Fi? So first, just to reiterate, you should be on your laptop or computer to take a speed test. You can be connected, or you must at minimum be connected through the Wi-Fi. To get an even more accurate reading, we recommend you go physically as close to your router as you can. And then you can also use an Ethernet cord to connect your computer to your router. We know not everyone has an Ethernet cord, so it is not required. But if you do have one and you're familiar, feel free to hook it up, and that'll just allow you to get an even more accurate reading. You can complete the speed tests during that broader network busy time between 5 and 10 p.m. But we do ask that other folks in your household are not playing video games or streaming video while you're taking the speed test, because it might not be an accurate read. All right, and I think we're almost done here. I want to make sure we're covering questions too. So maybe we'll cover one more of these and then we'll move into questions from you all. So if an individual is taking speed tests at beadchallenge.org, will they know when they've taken 3? So once you take 1 speed test, if you provide your information at the bottom of the screen, you'll receive an email that will allow you to opt in to receive those 3 reminders. And after you take 3 speed tests, you will stop getting reminders, and then you can opt out any time of those reminders. So I think I'll cover one more question, and then we'll go to your questions. I think this is an important one. So can an individual submit speed tests for multiple addresses? The big takeaway here is you need to be a resident of that address to submit a speed test for it, because you need to be the one subscribing to the internet, because you need to attest to the speeds that you currently subscribe to. So you can't sort of go to different buildings and take speed tests. You need to be the one responsible for that internet service. And I'm going to move into some of these questions in the chat here. Let me scroll up a bit. So
Devin,
Carol,
as we were on
oh,
the speed testing side of things, Alexis just posed a question on what is speed test attestation and how can people find what level of speed they subscribe to. So if you can answer that just so that it's in the flow.
yes, thanks for flagging. So attesting to the speed that you subscribe to means just telling us what it is based on your, honesty and full knowledge. So the best way to find what you subscribe to is by looking on your account, whether that's going on to your website, logging into your account. Some providers have a mobile app, and if need be, you can call your internet service provider or look on your bill. There will be a download speed and an upload speed, and it will be all in megabits per second. All right. So Carol, I am happy to chat with you offline because I know we don't have a ton of time right now. But if your local government is not sort of interested in engaging in this process, or they might not be aware of it, I think Shubhika and I are happy to connect with them to, give a little tutorial if there's an opportunity for that. But otherwise, I would say you as an individual can take a speed test on your own 3 times over 3 days at beadchallenge.org. And if you want to submit a different type of challenge, if you are a part of a nonprofit, you can submit as part of your nonprofit. And if not, we're happy to connect you with someone who may be able to submit on your behalf. So I would encourage you to email me just my name, devon.braunstein@illinois.gov, and we can support you directly. Do rural communities have priority within this program? So unserved locations have priority. They are spread throughout the state. There are a lot of unserved locations in rural areas. And so by the end of this program, we will be required to connect all unserved locations to broadband, which means locations that do not currently have access to at least 25/3 megabits per second. Okay, I think those are all the major questions I'm seeing, and we are right at time. So I will put our email in the chat. And Lisa, happy to also chat with you offline about the best way to engage rural communities as well. We've been having some one-on-one conversations to kind of address specific scenarios. So I'm going to put our broadband email in the chat. Can also share my phone number, and we're happy to answer any other questions offline, do demos. But we are right at time. So thank you, everyone. Again, thanks to Betsy and John, our presenters, Shubhika, and then Nancy, as usual, for hosting through the university.
Thank you, Devon and Shubhika. We appreciate the overview today, and a big thank you to the counties who came on to explain what their outreach looked like. That was John Scott from McLean County and Betsy Brandon from Lake County. So appreciate you, Devon and Shubhika, bringing them on to showcase. We will see you next week, February 14, same time, same place, for another update with the BEAD challenge process. Have a great rest of your week.
Thanks all. Bye-bye.